Hi, welcome to North Shore Place. My name is David, Director of Dining Services, and I'm going to walk you through today how to make our North Shore Place signature triple chocolate cake. So we're going to start with the ingredients and the items that you're going to need. There's 2 cups all-purpose flour, 2 cups granulated sugar, 3/4 of a cup cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, 2 eggs, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1 cup boiling water. You're going to need 1 9-inch cake pan and 2 4-inch cake pans and non-stick spray. So, you can either use a KitchenAid mixer or you can use a stainless steel bowl with a whisk. Whatever you have in the community is what you can use to mix the cake. So what we're going to start off doing is we're going to start off mixing all of our dry ingredients together, and then we're going to add our wet ingredients after our dries are completely incorporated. So we're going to start out by adding our all-purpose flour. We're going to add our granulated sugar, our cocoa powder, baking powder, baking soda, salt, and we're going to turn that on a low speed. If you turn it on high with the with the cocoa powder, it's all going to explode out of the mixer, and then you're going to have a really big mess to clean up. We're going to slowly mix the ingredients, the dry ingredients in the bowl, and while this is mixing, we're going to turn on our 1 cup of water, and we're going to bring that to a boil. Our water's boiling, so what we're going to do is we're going to start incorporating our wet ingredients. So we're going to add 1 egg at a time. We're going to add our oil. We're going to add our 1 cup of milk. Our 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So then the final product that we're going to add is our 1 cup of boiling water. So you'll see, once you're mixing the cake, the water will separate from the mixture, but as long as you keep mixing it, it'll come together and it'll combine. So once you have it fully incorporated, you want to take your spatula and you want to go around the inside of the cake again, just to make sure that you got everything off the sides, the bottom, and you'll come out with a nice chocolate cake mix. So we're going to take our cake pans and we're going to take our baking spray and we're going to spray all around the sides and the bottom. So using your rubber spatula, you're going to add your cake mix, and you want to fill up the cake molds or cake pans about 3/4 of the way full. Try and get every bit of the batter out. That's how we save money. Now we're going to take these, we're going to transfer them on to a baking sheet, and we're going to bake them in a 325 oven for 30 minutes. And to check when they're done, just take a toothpick and stick it in the middle, and if it comes out clean, then you know your cake is done. So we're going to take our cakes and we're going to put them in the oven at 325 for a half an hour to let them bake. So the next step of the cake now is making the chocolate buttercream for the inside and the outside of the cake. So the ingredients that you're going to need for this are 1 cup of cocoa powder, 5 cups of powdered sugar, 1.5 pound unsalted butter, 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, and 1/2 cup of milk. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by creaming our butter. So we're going to add that to our mixer. Make sure the butter is softened, because if it's not going to combine correctly, and you're going to get clumps in your buttercream. Turn the mixer down a little bit. We're going to add our vanilla extract. Set that to the side. So with our whisk attachment, you can see in the bowl that the butter is softened. So what we're going to do is we're going to slow down the speed a little bit, and we're going to add our cocoa powder. So now what we're going to do is we're going to slowly turn on the mixer and add the cocoa powder to the butter. Be careful not to turn it on fully, because all the cocoa powder will then come out of the bowl and you'll have a big mess to clean up. So you want to start off by slowly mixing it. Make sure you have a rubber spatula on hand to scrape the sides of the bowl. Then what we want to do, turn it off, you want to take your rubber spatula, clean off and scrape the sides. Get any excess cocoa powder. Add our powdered sugar into the bowl. Now with the same process, when you turn the mixer on, you want to be careful not to turn it on all the way, because then all the powdered sugar is going to come out on the bowl and all over your table. So it's going to become very clumpy. It's almost going to look like a dough. What we're going to do is we're going to turn the speed up a little bit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our 1/2 cup of milk. And then you'll see that dough will start to loosen up. The more that you whip it, the easier that it's going to be to spread on the cake when you ice it. Take it, give it a nice final mix by hand with the spatula. And there you have it, chocolate buttercream. So, now we're going to make the ganache. So how do you make the ganache is with heavy cream and chocolate chips. These are semi-sweet chocolate chips, is 1 part heavy cream to 1 part chocolate chips. So here we have two cups of chocolate chips and 2 cups of heavy cream. So the process of doing this is heating the cream up just before it's about to boil, and then pouring it over the chocolate chips and letting the hot cream melt the chocolate chips. So if you look at our cream, it's starting to boil, which gives us a good sign that we're ready to pour it over our chocolate chips. So what we're going to do is make sure you have a towel handy, because the handle can be hot. Safety precautions are always necessary. So we're going to take our heavy cream and we're going to pour it over our chocolate chips. So the key to this is let it sit for close to a minute. Do not stir it. If you stir it, the chocolate won't melt all the way, and then you're going to get a clumpy ganache. And nobody likes a clumpy ganache. So our ganache has been sitting for a minute, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our rubber spatula and we're going to start in the middle and work our way to the outside. So just slowly stir, and you'll see that the chocolate chips are starting to melt. So you want to stir in little. Just keep stirring and stirring. It may look like it's not going to come together at first, but once the hot chocolate starts mixing and melting, so what we're going to do, you'll see that it's starting to come together. So we're going to work our way now to the outside. So you'll see that our ganache has fully come together. So we're going to take this and we're going to let this sit to the side for a minute while we ice our cake, because you want the ganache to set up a little bit. Otherwise, when you pour it over the top of the cake, it's just going to ooze down the sides and it's not going to create the glaze that we wanted to create. So the next step, assembling the cake. So we have our buttercream, we have our ganache, so we have our cake. So you want to cool it at room temperature for about an hour, and then you want to put it in the freezer for 6 hours or overnight. This will freeze the cake and it'll make it easier to cut and ice when the time comes. And a serrated knife, and you want to cut the top of the cake off. Make it as even as possible. So you want to go around in a circular motion, and then it comes right off. And we're going to set that aside for later use. So you're going to take your cake round. We use a metal cake round. You can use a cardboard cake round. And what you're going to do is you're going to put your cake on the base. I use a towel underneath my cake stand and a towel on top of the cake stand, just so the cake doesn't move when cutting it or icing it. You can use a wet paper towel. That works great too. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our knife and we're going to look at about the middle of the cake, and we're going to make a cut and start going around the cake as we cut the top off until you reach the end, and then you want to just come through the center, and then you have your 2 layers. You're going to set that aside too. So now you can either use an offset icing spatula, or you can even use a pie spatula to add your buttercream to your cake. So what you want to do is you take your offset spatula and you grab your buttercream and you add a good amount to the middle of the cake. The way to ice is using your index finger on the angled part of the spatula and taking it and letting your wrist do all the movement, and starting from the inside out and working your way around the cake. This will make sure that it gets evenly spread and evenly layered around the cake. So what you want to do is it's really just using your wrist. You don't want to go with using your hand just using a snapped wrist motion and going around the cake will evenly spread it. And then you want to wipe your excess off your spatula and then just go around the cake to even it out. So now that we got the inside iced, we're going to go back to our top layer. We're going to grab our top layer and add that on top of the cake. And then again, we're going to take another nice amount of frosting and add that to the top of the cake. You don't necessarily have to go around and cut the sides. Most of the time you can go around and trim the sides so it's perfectly round, perfectly even around the outsides. But the amount of buttercream that you're going to put on and then the ganache, it won't make a difference. So now that we have our buttercream on the cake, you're going to take your spatula and in the same motion you're going to go around the top and evenly spread it around the top of the cake. Okay, so you want to wipe your excess off again and then just come around the top of the cake and remove any excess frosting or buttercream that is on top of the cake. So as soon as you have it as even as you can, what you want to do is you want to take your offset spatula and grab your excess and start filling it in on the sides. You can use a piping bag to do this. That seems to be a little bit more easier. So as you're going around, you just want to try and make sure that you have the areas covered. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lift our cake up. We're going to slide our towel out. And we're going to put it back on. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your offset spatula and just go around the outside of the cake. You can do this without a cake stand. It might take a tad bit longer time, but you will still get the same results. So just go around and just try and spread it out as evenly as you can. And the trick to this is applying pressure to the top in the middle, so then you'll get this outside edge around the top of the cake. And then what you do is you just clean your spatula off with your index finger, go up to one of the access points, press down and push in. This will give the outside excess off the top and spread it evenly across the top. And you just want to go around the cake and take any of the excess corners off the top. Then you can just go around and kind of even out the top. So now what you want to do is you want to take your offset spatula and reach and just get right underneath the cake round. Put your hand underneath and then transfer it over to a baking sheet with a wire rack. So this will help when you ganache to save your excess underneath the cake, and then you can use that for a later glaze or for something else in the kitchen. So our ganache has set up a little bit. It still will go over the cake and give it a nice glaze. As you can see, there's no chunks, it's nice and smooth, and it gives you a really shiny appearance to the outside layer of the cake. So what we're going to do is we're going to scrape the sides and take our rubber spatula and dump it over the top of the cake. Now the best way to do this is just to try to keep it centered when you're pouring it in the middle of the cake, so it'll go over the sides evenly. So we're going to set this bowl to the side and we're going to take our offset spatula again, and as you can see, the top is covered And now we just have to glaze the sides. So the best way to do this is to take your spatula and just slowly push some of the top excess ganache over the sides of the edge of the cake, and that'll glaze the side areas. So what you want to do is just clean off your spatula in the same way that you did evening out the top. Just go very, very gently and very, very lightly around the top. And then what you want to do is you want to take your spatula in the same way that you smooth out the sides, is just go around the cake and even out the layers, the sides of the cake. And this will give a nice clean appearance and a nice shiny appearance to the outside layer of the cake. So if you glaze it hot, you're not going to get the smooth effect. So that's why it's best to let the cake sit and let the ganache sit and set up a little bit. Anywhere from 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to let that set up before you pour it over the cake is a good amount of time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the cake that we had, is we're going to take that top layer of cake and we're going to rip a nice chunk off of it. So then you're going to take it and you're just going to crumble it into bite-sized pieces. You can use a Robo-Coupe for this, you can do it by hand, whatever way's easier for you. So now that we have a good amount of cake crumbs, you can always add a little bit more. The trick to this is if you let the ganache set long enough before you add your cake crumbs, they won't fall off the sides. And that'll give it kind of a sloppy appearance. So just by letting it sit and letting the ganache set up a little bit, you can take your pile of cake crumbs, grab a handful and start in the middle of the cake and just sprinkle them on top. You don't need a lot, and just try and be careful about not getting them on the sides of the cake. I mean, it may happen. And you just want to give it a slight little pat on top. And then you can take your cake and put it in the refrigerator to let it set. And that is the North Shore Place triple chocolate cake. So you do the same process with a little cake, obviously. You would cut the top layer off, you take it out of your mold, cut the top layer off, and then just make 2 even layers, and then you'd use your top layer for the cookie crumbs, and then you'd fill it and ice it the exact same way as you would do a larger cake. So this is our finished product. Here's a slice of the cake to see how it looks with the inside layers, the frosting, the ganache, and the cookie crumbs on top. And this is the final product of the whole cake. And I hope that you enjoy your cake. From all of us at North Shore Place, have a great day.